Hey everyone, today I'd like to go over some updates I've made to Grid Layout, which is a tool I've developed to help with laying out really high resolution VFX assets. So let's get started. Right here we have a whole bunch of repeating objects, and if I isolate this you can see it's made of multiple mesh islands with a little UV layout here. Now, this is just for demonstration purposes, but you can imagine that these are just any sort of repeating objects on your asset, be it bolts, building modules, whatever. You want to preserve this UV layout, but you want to lay them all out neatly on a UDIM. So let's select all of these objects, and we'll go over the Unstack UVs tool. So currently they're all overlapping. Let's run Unstack. And what this has done is it's unstacked all of those UV layouts while preserving the layout essentially. And it is stacking vertically, and once that reaches capacity it will stack another vertical column and so on, and it will try and fit as many into the UDIM as possible, but if it can't fit it'll move over to the next UDIM. So the beauty of this is that it also means that textures can copy and paste textures between UDIMs very easily, because you know that these UVs match perfectly to these UVs. So there's an added benefit there, especially coming from a VFX environment. If we ever want to make changes to these UVs, we can stack them and bring them back to origin, make some changes, whatever we want to do. And we can also dial in the island margin and the tile margins if we need, but we'll leave them at default for now. And let's unstack again. And there you go. Very useful tool for any kind of repeating geometry. One thing to note is that it works based on bounding boxes. So if you're trying to unstack islands or UV layouts with different bounding boxes, you won't get expected results. But if it's a similar bounding box or the same, it will work just fine. Great, let's move on to the next tool here. Just a simple Texel density tool. Not reinventing the wheel, but it's quite fast, which works in its benefit. So we can come here, get the Texel density, select the other UVs, and set the Texel density. Now that is currently using the unified scale method, but we can also change that to individual, and that'll scale up the individual islands. I think this is just as fast as ZenUV, which is the fastest Texel density tool out there. So it has that going for it. On to the next tool. Now this is my favorite one. It's the Shift UVs tool. So if you've ever worked on a really large VFX asset, I mean, I've worked on assets which have between 500 and 1,000 UDIMs, and it's very hard to manage a layout when you have to shift around a large amount of tiles at once. So if I was to do this manually, if I want to shift this over by 5 units, I'd have to move this over here, then grab these, and then move that over here, and then shift all of these, and you know, it's a pain. It's a real pain to do that, especially when you've got 1,000 of these UDIMs, right? Which is what inspired me to make this tool. So now we can just type in 5, shift UVs, and since we're dealing with a lot of geometry here, it can take a few seconds for this to process. And there you go. It's shifted all of them over while respecting the UDIM bounds, making UDIM management on large VFX assets quite easy now. It can also work in the negatives. So shift UVs -5. And it'll bring it back to where it was. Very, very useful. This has saved me so much time on a building recently. Great. Let's go on to the next tool. Another one I have developed is just fill UDIM selection. So you can really just loosely select the tiles that you want to select and click fill UDIM selection. And this is useful because a lot of the time you have tiny little UVs right on the borders here, and in order to accurately select, you've got to zoom in and just make sure that you don't get this, you don't accidentally select that one. And again, on large assets when you need to make fast selections, this is really, really helpful. And there you go. That's basically the summary of grid layout. I hope to keep adding new features, but if you can relate to the UV layout struggles that I've had working on large VFX assets, and you can see the value in this, then you can pick it up on my Gumroad or the Blender market. Cool. Thanks, guys.